Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tashmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadankitam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakammalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijanasahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Shri Lalita Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindeshwari Vrishabhanu Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisheshai Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all to the online Bhagavad Gita course from ISKCON Mangalore. Yeah. So we are dealing with chapter 5. Yeah. And today it is the second part of chapter 5. And we will conclude today this topic. Yeah. And tomorrow we'll go to the next topic. So before we start the rest of the topic, so can we have a quick recap of what we understood in the last session? So anyone remembers anything, you can walk through. So chapter 5 is Karma Yoga, yeah? So, yeah. Anything anyone wants to discuss? So anyone remembers we had question answers like who is a Nishkama Karma Yogi? And then what does he do? Do we remember that? No. Okay. Then I will
Um,
only summarize. Yeah, go ahead. Anyone wants to speak?
I was not there last class.
Okay. Rajni Mataji. Okay. Okay.
Class
So
which
I'll. Sorry. Go ahead.
in my first level, what was thought of Nishkan Karma Yogi is that they do not expect anything. They just do the karma. They are supposed to do the karma and not expect anything from, as in the fruits.
Yeah. But yes, so chapter 5 is with knowledge. Yeah. So that is chapter 3. Okay. So chapter 5, so we are learning Nishkam Karma Yoga with knowledge. Yeah. So yeah, I did see someone. Anupriya Mataji wanted to tell something. I did see that you unmuted yourself. Okay, fine then. She says nothing. Okay. Yeah. And we were actually looking into this chapter. Yeah. So chapter 5 is nothing but an extension of 3. So wherein, but in chapter 3, we basically spoke that we shouldn't actually anticipate, or say we should not be interested for the results. Yeah. We should work and leave it to Lord, yeah, to Krishna. And the same thing is discussed, but here, right, with some knowledge. So we got some enlightenment. Yeah. So wherein, say, we saw um, the three doers, right? So the Jiva, Prakriti, and Ishvara, or the Paramatma. Yeah. So the Jiva seeks, Paramatma sanctions, and then the material nature allocates it. Yeah. So it comes in the form of the modes of material nature. Yeah. And then we did see. So basically, it is like a initiator, facilitator, and sanctioner. Yeah. So initiator is soul, and Lord is the sanctioner as the Paramatma, and material nature is the facilitator. Yeah. So, and then we did see that qualitatively we are one with the Lord, but not quantitatively. Yeah. And then we did see the differences between soul and super soul. Yeah. And we actually spoke about the yeah, and we spoke about this one also, right? In Riga story also we actually spoke in, so because it was more of so what happens if we are more involved in the pious and impious activities, right? And even so what happens if we actually merely renounce the activities, yeah, and not keeping Lord at the center, and then we saw about Sankhya and devotional service. Yeah. Okay. So with that, we'll continue with the next chapter, the next section. Yeah. So which is actually so the fourth part. Yeah. So here we'll discuss about the liberation by focus. Okay. On the super soul. So here we know that so we got the knowledge that every living entity has got a super soul also. Yeah. So first we got to know that we are not the body and we are the spirit. Yeah. So post that we got the knowledge that so we have a super soul also. Yeah. And then so what does a super soul do? Yeah. And so what does a soul do? And then what is the difference between them? So we did see until now, and then how so the work happens. Yeah. So whatever work we or the action which we perform, right? So that is done in the three modes of material nature. Yeah. So either sattva, rajas, tamas. Yeah. And then the next section onwards, right? So from 5.17, right? So we'll go through. So what happens to the liberated souls, right? So once he reaches into this stage, right, where he knows that he is not the body, and then he knows the super soul, and then he understands that there are three doers. Yeah. So basically, he's elevating his knowledge, right? So he's going into the next level, and so doing the work. So this is doing with the work. Say all this knowledge has to be integrated. So work by keeping Krishna, yeah, as the center, or so we should do our prescribed duties to the fullest, yeah, and rather we should not go to the jungle and meditate. So whatever work is there, we'll have to do it to the fullest, and then leave it to the Lord. Yeah. And then when we are saying the protection of Lord, right? So things will not be as it should be in any other yoga system. Yeah. So in Bhakti Yoga, so it will be a different path. Okay. So let's actually go through the chapter now. Yeah. This is in 17 and 18, right? So what happens? So basically, when one fixes his consciousness on the super soul, right? So here, so when actually one fixes his consciousness on the super soul, his intelligence, mind, and refugee are focused. Yeah, he is free from doubts because he has knowledge of the three doers. Yeah, because he knows what is happening everywhere. Yeah, he sees the super soul is sanctioning but impartial. Yeah, so why we call it as impartial? Anyone remembers? Okay. So we are desiring, yeah, and then due to our adamant desires, right, the super soul is sanctioning, yeah, and then so it is not impartial. So the super soul is present in every living being, okay. Even so, the super soul is a companion. So we'll study in the coming verses. In the verse 18, we'll see that. So wherein the super soul is the companion of the smallest living creature, yeah. So even in the worm also there is a super soul, and even in the elephant also there is a super soul of the same size. Yeah. So he is the companion. So no other person would be the companion. Yeah. Life after life, it is only the super soul who is the companion. So with this temporary body, right? So whatever relations or whatever qualifications we have, it actually exists until this body deteriorates. Yeah. And then once this body is gone, right, so nothing moves on. Yeah. And then he sees, say once we are at this stage, right, so once a person who is actually say qualified, or so who becomes learned, right, so he sees everything in equal vision. Yeah. So he sees every living being as equal. Yeah. So he doesn't look with the bodily structures and all those things. Yeah. So that is an summary of 15 and 17 and 18. Yeah. So here, right? So tad buddhayas, tad atmanas. So with intelligence, right? So with the intelligence and with uh, the mind, yeah, and tannistas. So with faith, yeah. So anyone who does this, right? Who fixes up all these elements into the Lord, right? So then all his misgivings are actually cleansed. Okay. So and then he is free. Okay. He is free from all the dualities and all. Yeah. So because he is actually dedicating everything, right? So he is putting all his energies into the Supreme Lord. Yeah. So one is intelligence and mind. Yeah. And then whose faith is all meant for the Supreme. So he's keeping all this, right? So Tad Buddhaya. So those whose intelligence is always in the Supreme, yeah. So everything is for Supreme. Tad Buddhaya, Tad Atmana. So it's nothing but his mind, yeah. And Nishtha is nothing but faith. And Tat Parayana. So it is nothing but taking shelter of him. Yeah. So basically he is focusing everything on the Supreme, yeah. So and then he is taking shelter of it. So who has done all these things, right? So he's actually a liberated soul, yeah. And then whatever um, says sins or so whatever cleansing has to be done, right? So that will be done. All the misgivings and everything will be cleared off. Okay. So enlightenment can lead to transcendence. Yeah. If it is focused on the super soul. Okay. So this is when the knowledge is used to focus on the super soul, then one can act in a transcendental way. Okay. So when one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge all are fixed in the supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceed straight on the path of liberation. So when all these things come in line, right? So he gets the knowledge and then proceeds in the way of liberation. So do we know who this Prabhuji is in this picture? Anyone knows?
No, Prabhuji.
No? He's Aindra Prabhu. Okay. So anyhow, so he's no more with us, but he's the one who started 24-hour kirtan in Vrindavan. Okay. So he's one of the Prabhus, so whom we should know, yeah, because you can in the YouTube we can find his kirtans, yeah. So he used to do kirtans 24 hours in Vrindavan. He is the one
What's
who
his name,
started.
Prabhuji? Sorry.
Aindra, Aindra.
Thank you.
So even yeah, so he used to actually do bhajans very heavily, and then you can actually locate in YouTube and then hear them. They are very soulful. Yeah. So that's something. And rest you all can read through. So so the next verse, right? It says that Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Sunichaiva Swapake cha Pandita Samadarshinaha. So here, right? So once this knowledge is elevated about soul, super soul, and everything, right? And then he knows how things are carried out in the material world, right? So then a learned Brahmana, right? So the learned person, right? Whenever he looks all these people, right? So whatever things we have in the picture, right? Say like a Brahmana, a learned Brahmana, or a cow, yeah, Gavi Hastini, a elephant, a dog, a chandala, or whatever it is, right? So everywhere he looks them equally. Yeah? So because he knows that everywhere there is super soul, and then he treats them equal. So he looks them with equal vision. So he doesn't see that okay, so elephant is big, and then so it has got more value, and then an ant doesn't have a value. Yeah. So he doesn't treat in that way. Yeah. So he has equal vision for everyone. Yeah. Because he's more interested with the super soul. He's not covered with the outer covering. Yeah. So he doesn't look at the outer covering. Yeah. So that is called that vision is called conditioned soul, right? So Prabhupada writes, in the material world we are all conditioned. Yeah. So and the other thing also, he is not looking at so different kinds of modes also, right? If you look in, right, so this Brahmana and cow are what mode of goodness. Yeah. And elephant is mode of passion. Yeah. And then say even the dog and say the dog eaters are nothing but in the mode of tamaguna, right? Ignorance. Even he doesn't look in that category also. Yeah. So he doesn't look any outcast, incast, nothing. So everything is same for him. Yeah. That's how a learned person, or so once you are advanced spiritually, right? So you look everything in that angle. So equality of vision based on true knowledge. So this is what a Vaishnava looks in. Yeah. So he doesn't look things differently. Yeah. But yeah, these are all in the advanced stages. Yeah. So we are not in that category. So because even so if you look at Prabhupada, right? So when Prabhupada went to the US, right? So he was not actually carried away with the big skyscrapers and all, right? So and then he was saying that this is more worst Yeah, because people are more in sense gratification. Yeah, because at that time, right, that was the hippie culture which was there, and then drugs and all those things were like everything was open, and so he was looking into that angle, but he was never interested in the big city skyscrapers or the standard of living and all those things. Yeah. So yeah, that vision uh, getting is very difficult. Yeah. So that it will happen, but yeah, after the stage. 1 minute, somebody is. Yeah, I muted them. So this is the mundane vision. We see species, caste. Yeah. Usually, right? In the material world, right? So first thing is we'll see say which region, which caste, yeah, easy belonging to, easy belonging from my place, yeah, and we do what not, right? So we have so many. First is language. We select for people who are speaking our own language. Then we'll say okay, which caste. We'll try somewhere or the other, right? We'll try to do an split, and so that is how our vision is. But yeah, but the spiritual vision is something else. Yeah. So in the spiritual vision, right? So they are liberated, right? And then they are self-realized soul and can see everything and everyone equally. They don't have enmity or they don't have friendship. So everything, everyone, they look alike. Yeah. So they're not worried about the sukha dukkha or man upman. So, what is equal basis of equal vision? Spiritual equality of living entities as spirit soul. He looks. What is the basis of equal vision? Is nothing but living entities as spirit souls. Yeah, and then is neutral. Okay, and then he understands what is soul and super soul. Yeah? And we just spoken, right? So we are qualitatively same, but not in quantity. So and these any individual soul, right? So his area of influence is limited to his body, but Paramatma is present in every single entity. Yeah? He knows he's present in each and every body, and then he knows what is happening. Yeah. So possibly we may actually pretend that at the outside world, right? So we are very nice, and then so we do everything intact. Yeah. But yeah, so whatever we do, right? So Paramatma is always watching. Yeah. And so he knows better. Okay, so what we are trying to do and then what we are displaying. Yeah, so that is being covered here. Yeah, and so next verses we'll see. So this is more again a little bit more deeper into this. Yeah. So those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. Yeah. So they are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. So those whose mind is established with this equanimity, right? So with this equality, they have conquered the conditions of birth and death. Is nothing but they are moving out of the birth and death cycle. Yeah, they are getting liberated. Brahman is nothing but the first stage of the absolute. Yeah, so they are they are actually liberated. Knowing this, they are liberated, and then say they are already at the liberated stage, which is nothing but the Brahman effulgence, yeah, the Lord's effulgence, yeah. So the next verse says, a person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant or nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows that science of God is already situated in transcendence. So this is what. So he doesn't lament and all these things we covered before also, right? So who is actually sober? Yeah. So this is just a comparison of three slokas. Yeah. So this again will cover it 21. So he doesn't have any attraction to the matter. Yeah. And then he is called as flawless because he knows, right? He understands the soul, super soul, and the doers, right? And then he is able to connect to the Paramatma, right? So which is nothing but he is flawless, and then he is not having any interest with this with the matter, right? So and neither, because he's already in trance, right? So he's actually in Krishna consciousness. He's in full Krishna consciousness, and then that's the reason he's called as flawless. Yeah. So he doesn't react for anything. Yeah. And then he has reached one level above. Yeah. And then being without desire or hatred, one intelligent does not rejoice. Yeah. So when you are in that stage, right? So even if somebody gives you a piece of gold or a stone, right, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So anything in the shape of a square, if you give him a square biscuit of gold or you give him a square biscuit of stone, right? It doesn't matter to him. Yeah. No illusions of false bodily identification. Yeah. So what is this called? This false bodily identification. What is the word? If we translate, right, what does it come to? Anyone knows?
We are not body, we are soul.
Yes, Prabhu. But one word we usually use.
Impersonification.
Um, yeah, Sukant Prabhu, you said it, but the only thing is the word is false ego, right? So
False ego.
false ego is what? Same thing, right? So we identify with the body. So that is our false ego, right? I, me, right? My. So that's false ego. And then say we actually, that's what, right? We covered all those things. So we judge people by their color and all those things. So that is all comes under this category. Yeah, and the next sloka, right? So it says being in the, we'll go through the sloka verse, but here we'll just go through the pictorial representation. Yeah, being fixed in the self, one experiences great happiness with higher taste, and thus one is never attracted to temporary sense gratification. When you are in these stages, right? If at all there is anything which comes in the temporary sense gratification, right, you'll not be interested because you are one level above it, right? So you are not distinguishing anything, and then so that's the reason you'll not get attracted towards the sensual pleasures and all those things. Yeah. And then you'll have unlimited happiness because you yourself are happy within yourself. Yes. And then you know, say, how things are. Yeah. And because if you see, right, a liberated soul is not actually attracted towards any kind of sense pleasures. Yeah. So he avoids high material pleasures, sex pleasures, spiritual realization, and all those things, right? So here it is written, right? Spiritual realization and sex pleasures go ill together, so they don't match in. Yeah. So these two categories we cannot overlap or interlink. Yeah. So and then here the example of Yamunacharya is also given. So this is if you read in majority of the books and purports, right, so you'll find this thing. So it is more on these things only about the pleasures. Yeah. So he actually writes in. So whenever any thought comes in about the opposite sex, right? So he actually spits on it. So there is a famous verse also on that. So anytime he gets that kind of thoughts, right, he says that he spits on that thought. So that's the actual essence of it. I think in the purport also it's there. If you want, you can read through. And so this is the verse. Yeah. So such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. Okay. So he's enjoying within he's in trance. So he actually is connected to the Lord, and then he's enjoying. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness for he concentrates on the Supreme. So he's concentrating on the Supreme, and then other sense pleasures do not actually agitate him. Yeah. So do we know this thing? So did we discuss this anytime? This past time? Who is this person? Anyone knows? Sorry, did I mute everyone? No, right?
Haridas Thakur Prabhuji.
Yeah, correct. So is Haridas Thakur. Did we watch? Okay, I did. Okay. Yeah, we did discuss, but we just discussed one or two lines, right? And so did we watch that movie? So, the small movie which we had in YouTube. Anyone watched? Can raise the digital hands if you have watched. Okay, no one has watched, is it? Okay. So watch it. So at least you'll know the story of Haridas Thakur. Yeah. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? So if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, say Haridas Thakur is one of the heroes. Yeah. So you'll feel him, he is the hero. Okay. So as will take time, right, to read Chaitanya Charitamrita and all that. That is very advanced. So for now, at least go through this movie and then know who Haridas Thakur is. Yeah. So I think in the past also we discussed, right? He actually used to chant 3 lakh times. Yeah. So this Maha Mantra used to chant daily for 3 lakh times. Yeah. So he used to do Koti, I think in a month he used to do Koti Namas or something. Yeah. So he was very popular in that time. Okay. So, and then he was a Muslim. Okay. By birth, he was a Muslim. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him the Diksha to chant. Okay. So he was very popular in those days. So he had a lot of followers also. Yeah. So wherever he used to go in, right, people used to come in big mass and they used to do gatherings and all. So here, right, when he was in some village, he was there in West Bengal. I don't recollect that village name, but the ruler was Ramchandra Khan. Yeah. So he didn't like, yeah, he was envious basically of Haridas Thakur, and then he didn't like the fan following and then the mass gathering, right? So he said that he's a dongi. Okay. He is only doing all these things are show off. And then he said that I will actually tarnish him, or say I will bring out the truth, okay, out of this fellow. And then he was a flamboyant, the other side, right? So he was in Tamaguna, and then he used to actually do all abominable things. So he went to a prostitute, and then he said that there is a dongi who has come into our town. So can you actually allure him, yeah, and so distract him, and so that our soldiers will come and then will captivate and then bring out the reality to the people. Okay. So to the masses, so that that fan following would not be there. Okay. So then he actually sent a prostitute in the midnight when Haridas Thakur was doing the japa. Yeah. So and say first day she actually even she spoke to him, and then Haridas Thakur said that let me finish my rounds and then I will obey whatever you say. Okay. And then she was waiting, and then He was in his own trance. He was doing his own japa. Yeah. So he continued. One day finished. Second day, then she said that, okay, today is past. So tonight, say you should actually give me some time. Okay, then Haridas Thakur says, okay. And the next day she comes in, the same thing happens. And in between, right, at times, say unconsciously, she used to say Hari Hari, whatever. She didn't understand much of it, but at times she used to do. So, what is this Hari Hari you're doing, and all those things? She's trying to disturb him. Yeah, nothing worked out. And then she reported to Ramchandra Khan. And then he said that, okay, so he may 1 or 2 days he can sustain, but not the third day. And then the third day, the same thing happened. Yeah. But what happened is, so being in the association of a pure devotee, right? So Haridas Thakur is in a different stature. So being with him, and then those Nama, right? By hearing that, that's all Shuddha Nama, right? So what we chant is not Shuddha Nama. Yeah. So whatever they were chanting, it was all Shuddha Nama. It had an impact. And then on the third day, she fell on the feet of Haridas Thakur. And then she revealed everything. And then she said that my motto was something else. Yeah. So that is the story. And then there are other stories also you can read through. And then Haridas Thakur gave her Diksha, yeah, and she became a devotee thereafter. Okay, so that is a story. So wherein, say, a self-realized person, right, or a self-liberated person, right, doesn't tangle into all these material sense pleasures. Okay, the next verse is about that only. Yeah. यही संपर्शज भोग दुःखयोन एव तम् आद्य अंतवंत कौन्तेय नातेषु रमते बुद्ध. So here, this is about our senses, right? An intelligent person or the material sensual things, right? So he is not interested. An intelligent person does not take part in source of miseries or temporary happiness. Yeah. So which are due to contact with material senses. Okay. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Okay. So if you look in here, right? So these are all for temporary happiness, right? So all these things happen. So if you look this fish, right? So this fish has got ample amount of food to eat in the sea or river, whatever it is, right? But still, it actually looks for the little fish or whatever is hang to this hook, right? So even though there is surplus, it wants to enjoy this. That's how it gets trapped. Okay. And the same thing happens here in, right? So the deer with the sound, right? It gets attracted. Even here, the fire moths looking at the light, they get attracted and then they die there. Yeah. And then this to taste the nectar. This bee comes in here, and then what happens in the evening? This flower actually closes. Yeah? And then this gets trapped here. Similarly, the elephant. Eh? So everything for temporary sense pleasure, right? So we get trapped. Okay. So that is the verse here. Intelligent person do not take part in sensual pleasures. Yeah. All these things are sensual pleasures. Yeah. So and because they have have a beginning and end. Okay. Anything. Say if you eat a gulab jamun, right? It will not taste forever, right? It will only taste for the moment you have it. Yeah. And then they are all binding in nature, all things. Yeah. So the relations and everything. And then those are the source of miseries. Yeah. But if you look at the intelligent person, right, this does not take part in sensual pleasures. Yeah. Because he knows these are all temporary. Yeah. And then here there is a reference of Rishabhadeva. So this comes in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So wherein he says that human life is not meant to do hard labor. So yeah, and we should not labor 24 hours. Yeah, so that's not the purpose of human life. Okay, the purpose of human life is actually to perform. So he says Digvijayam. He says right. So Divyam. Sorry. He says that it's Tapodivyam. Yeah, correct. The correct word is human body is meant for Tapodivyam. So wherein we should actually undergo penances. Okay, for transcendental realization. So that is the goal of human life. Yeah, and not to work as donkeys. Yeah, and even so once you go into the next level, right? So you'll get to know that the timings also, right? So in a day, right, the 24 hours should be actually split into 8 hours. Yeah, 8 hours for ourselves, sleep and bodily maintenance, 8 hours work, and 8 hours for spiritual activities. Yeah, that's something which we can cover here. And then, so here, right, say all these urges, right? So all these spiritual urges, right? Or sorry, the sensual urges, right? Here the question is, till what stage we'll have to control them? Yeah. So here the Lord says that they have to be controlled until the end of life. Yeah. Can someone read this translation, please? Uh,
Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well.
situated and is happy in this world. Hare
Because
Krishna.
advantages are coming in between. So
Sorry, Prabhu. Is it okay, no?
advantages are coming well
Uh,
situated and he is happy in this world. Purpose, advertiser were coming in between, so disturb.
Okay, no problem. Hare Krishna. Thank you. I just wanted to sip some water. So I just wanted to read this. So we'll have to control these urges, yeah, the sense urges until our death, yeah. And say the next verse, right? And how long do I have to tolerate the pushing of these senses? Yeah, all these urges, right? So tongue, smell, touch, hear, vision, all these things, right? Until we leave this material body. Yeah. So if we control, then so there is higher taste, right? So we'll get liberated, and then so we'll never have this body. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll have to control it until the end. Yeah. So and so here, right? So we'll have to follow that Rishabhadeva's explanation. Yeah. So wherein this human body is meant for tapodivyam and so to do penance and transcendental realization. Yeah. So it is basically like so we are in this conditioned body, right? So we are uh, like in a diseased condition, right? So we'll have to get fit ourselves. Yeah. So to get out of the diseases, right? So we'll have to follow some restrictions, and then there are some conditions, right? So that is what is mentioned here. So if we follow through that, so then yeah, so we'll go back to Godhead. Yeah. And so in this verse, right, so this is all continuation. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. Okay. He is liberated in the supreme and ultimately he attains the supreme. So the same thing, yeah, these are all the extensions of it. So we'll just see a pictorial representation of 23 and 24. Yeah. So duties of, so all these things. Yeah. So even in the nectar of devotion, right, you'll read this. The first sloka itself is this. Yeah. So in the nectar of devotion, right, the first sloka, oh, sorry, this is nectar of instructions. So wherein you'll read Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarprasto Vegam. Yeah. So you'll read those things. So in the next level, right, in level 3, you'll read all these things have to be controlled. So then you'll be called as a Dhira. Okay. And so why to tolerate? So all these things, whatever we spoke, right? So this is more or less the same thing. Yeah. How do we tolerate? By acquiring higher taste. Yeah. So which is nothing but the Brahma Bhuta stage, so which this we have discussed. Yeah. So this is already covered. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. So, a liberated soul, right? He doesn't try to harm anyone, right? So, he doesn't harm any of the living entities, yeah? And then he lives very conducively, yeah? So, and who is actually busy, yeah, doing some work or the other, right, for Krishna, and doing the service, yeah. So, he actually he is free from all the sins, yeah, and then he achieves the liberation. So even that is what is being discussed. So these are all the different services which he does in, right? Yeah. So what is the highest well welfare work? To revive the forgetfulness of Krishna being the supreme enjoyer. So this is the problem, yeah. And few days ago we were discussing also, right? So why we are in this material world, right? Because it is due to this, the forgetfulness of Krishna being the supreme enjoyer and the well-wisher. So we have forgotten that, and then we feel that so we are the proprietors, and then we are the proprietors of our senses, yeah, and then we want to enjoy the material nature, and actually, say on the name of industrialization or whatever it is, so we are trying to overkill for our sense gratification. So he is beyond the dualities from doubts. Mind is engaged within. Yeah. So this is the qualification. Okay. So for the liberated soul, yeah, or the learned sage, who can engage in such welfare work. So one cannot engage in such first class welfare without being liberated in the supreme. Yeah. So the best thing is we engage in the Krishna consciousness activities. Yeah. So we do some service to Krishna. So those who are free from kama and krodha, right? So those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured liberation. So who is actually fit to get liberated? So the one who is free from anger and all material desires. Yeah? So that person, right? And then who is self-realized. So he is actually assured for liberation. Okay. Yeah, these things will come, but it takes time. Yeah? Because we have our own old vasanas, right? So, it's very difficult. So like Vishwamitra also, right? With Vishwamitra was a sage, right? He was a yogi. He had a lot of powers, yeah, but still he had some old vasanas due to which he got attracted to Menaka, right? So it takes time, so and it has to be cleansed. Then only we can move on, yeah. So here, right? So the same verse, right? By fixed meditation on super soul, one soon attains liberation in near future. Yeah. So this is we'll have to follow through the sadhanas and everything, and daily rituals, doing service, yeah, and to Krishna. All those things will actually purify our heart slowly, and then we'll move out from this material entanglements and then show more interest towards the spiritual things. Yeah. So here an example is being given of the tortoise. Yeah. So if you look in, right, the tortoise brings offsprings simply by meditation. Yeah. The eggs are laid on the land and tortoise meditates on the eggs while it is in water. Okay. So similarly, devotee in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, okay, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly. So this is nothing but trance. Yeah. So once we are in samadhi and by engagement in Krishna consciousness, so we can also go to the Goloka. Yeah. And this is so how do we control our anger, right? So it was mentioned that we'll have to control our anger and material senses, right? It is possible through Ashtanga Yoga. Yeah. So this here Krishna actually brings this because the next chapter is related to this. Yeah. So every chapter, if you see, right, at the end, right, Krishna gives information, or he gives some hint that this is what the next chapter would be, right? So here he is giving the hint of how to we control our mind and senses. Yeah. So this is through Ashtanga Yoga. Yeah. So and then this process will elaborately read through in the next chapter, which is nothing but Dhyana Yoga. Yeah. So we'll cover this in detail in sixth chapter. Yeah. So this is nothing but Ashtanga Yoga. Yeah. 8 steps. Yeah. So what will happen if you perform Ashtanga Yoga, right? You will realize the super soul. Okay. So Brahman, super soul realization, and then Bhagwan realization. But for a Bhakta, right? So it is directly Bhagwan realization. Yeah. And then all these things, right? We are going to discuss in detail. Yeah. So the next chapter is all about Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. Yeah. But we have another important shloka, so which is 5.29, right? So and then it gives the peace process also. So that is an important. That is one another uh, important shloka so of this chapter. Yeah. So this is Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam Sarvaloko Maheshwaram Hruhudam Sarvabhutanam Yatva Mam Shanti Mruchate. So this verse, right? Um, in this verse, right, the sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifice and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods and benefactor and all well-wisher of living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. Yeah. So this is very important loka. Yeah. So in this, the Lord says, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam, saying that so he is the benefactor of all yajnas and tapas. Okay. So the ultimate thing reaches to Lord Krishna. Okay. So he is saying he is the one. It's not any other God, yeah, or so it is he who is the one. Yeah. So he is the benefactor, or say he is the one who is the enjoyer also. So Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasama. So he says that all, all the yagnas which are done by the Karma Yoga. Sorry. So he is the enjoyer, yeah. And the Gyan is whatever tapas they do, right? So all those things are for him only, yeah. So those all things have to be ultimately reached to Lord Krishna. And then he says, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. I am the great controller of say all the people, yeah. So because he is residing as Paramatma, right? And in every living entity, right? He is there, and he is the one who says that Suhrudam Sarva Bhutanam, and then he is the one, he is the friend of all living entities. Yeah. So and he gives the benefit to all entities also, right? By instructing about bhakti. Yeah. So even here, through the medium of devotees and out of mercy, right? Even bhakti yoga is also covered it. Yeah. And he is the object of worship. Okay. Shrudam Sarva Bhutanam. So everyone should actually worship him. Yeah. And Gyatva Mam Shanti Muchyate. One cannot attain say realization. Okay. Unless one is above the modes of material nature. Yeah. And by doing bhakti, right? So only we can go beyond these modes. Yeah. And we can actually realize the God. Yeah. And we should know that the object of worship is Lord Krishna. Yeah. And the other thing, right? The peace formula is also being discussed here. So, which is nothing but Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary. So, everyone, we should know in any yoga, right? Could be Jnana Yoga, could be Karma Yoga, could be Bhakti Yoga, right? So, the ultimate beneficiary is Lord Krishna. So, that is one. Yeah. And then he is the greatest. So no one is greater than him. Yeah. And he is the master of everything. Even he is the master of the Maya also, right? We have seen that. So in the three doers, right? So he even is the master of the Maya or the material nature. And the spiritual world also. So we'll know about the spiritual world and this material world. He is the master, right? He'll tell in chapters, in coming chapters, right? And 9 and 10, he'll reveal himself. Yeah. So what he is. Okay. But these are this we should know in there. So in this particular sloka, right, he covers so many things. Yeah. So who by knowing this, right? So whoever knows him, right? So that he is the supreme enjoyer, he is the supreme controller, yeah. And then he is the proprietor of everything. So if we know this, right? So then everything settles down. Yeah. So we'll not have unnecessary hankering in this material world. Okay. So that is the peace formula. Okay. And then with this, we'll wrap up this chapter. And this is a pictorial representation of the, yeah, this is the peace formula. And so mostly it is covering whatever I said, right? So pure soul is the eternal servant of God as fragmental part and parson. Yeah. So this causes of suffering, yeah, one has to work in terms of material necessities as long as one is in contact with matter. Yeah. So this we I discussed in the last class, wherein we'll have to actually use the material nature for the bare necessities which are required and not for sense gratification. Yeah. And yeah, and this is Ashtanga yoga is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, this we'll cover in the next chapter. Yeah. Okay. So with this, we'll end this chapter. Yeah, this is the piece on the platform of liberation. Yeah, this is the whole chapter which we covered. And Hare Krishna. If there are any questions, I'd like to take. And I see the Mataji, are everyone attending, submitting this request forms, this attendance? Are they marking? Okay. Aishwarya Mataji. Okay, it's not there. Okay, she has to join some other class. Okay, that's fine. Are we actually updating this attendance, Prabhujis and Matajis? Please do it, and then say even quizzes, right? So you can do it. So we are not discussing too many things, right? So we are actually, so in every 15 days you should complete one chapter, right? Or sorry, in every week. So it should not take much of your time. So in a week you should be able to cover the quizzes of that chapter. Yeah. So try, if you are not completing them, right? So try to complete them. Yeah, because these are required for the next level, right? So to move on to the next level, all these things would be required, the attendance and the quiz. Yeah. So try to complete them. Hare Krishna Prabhu, you want to tell something? Pravakar Prabhu? Hello? Okay. No, I think it was some other communication which he is doing. Pravakar Prabhu, do you want to speak something?
Yes, Prabhuji. Actually, I want one doubt, Prabhuji.
Yeah, tell Prabhu.
That super soul will granted, na? That it is not super soul will not granted 100% or.
See, it is our desire. Okay, the first thing is whatever we desire, right? So we took the example of the small child asking of for ice cream, right, Prabhu? So being a parent, right? So you'll say that ice cream is not good, okay? But still, we have an adamant desire. So the child says that no, so I want it, and he creates. He is asking you then and there. Okay, so being a parent, right? You have been asked to give me, Papa. I want, and then so then what does the father do? Okay, he grants it. Okay, go and have the ice cream. Yeah. So similarly, we have that adamant desires, and then whenever we go to the super soul, right? The super soul sanctions because we have got that independence, yeah, to choose our desires. Okay. So that's the reason super soul will sanction it, but it will try. So first it will give you indications that this is not good.
Okay.
But still we know, right? So people say who are obese, right? Take another example. So for them, right, the doctor says that you should only eat salads and then you should eat liquid food. But will they do that? No. Whosoever does it, right? So he becomes fit. But majority of the cases they can't. Yeah, because the desire for eating, right? So is there for them. So they like to eat all pizzas, pastas. So they can't stop eating the junk food. Okay, Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhuji.
And there was another question so which was being asked, I think, in the feedback form, some Prabhu had asked about how to do chanting. Yeah. So like, so undisturbed or so how to do chanting effectively. So Prabhu, it's, there is no direct formula. Yeah. So from our side, right, so we can actually try all these things like getting up in the early morning, right? So when the mind is calm and then the mind is, when the time is also in the mode of goodness, right? So at that time you wake up and then you you do your rounds, whatever rounds you can do, right? So basically take bath and then do a small puja, whatever you can do, right? So offer fruit, flowers, and water to the Lord, and then start this practice. Better if you sit in any of the asanas, right? Any of the sukhasanas, padmasana, vajrasana, whichever you are comfortable, right? So, or where whatever is comfortable. So sit on the in that particular posture. So keep your posture straight, yeah. So and we'll read this in Dhyan Yoga is also coming in, so which is all about that. We can take few of the good things from there and then use it, and try to focus and then chant, yeah. And while chanting, right, don't be harsh to the mind, yeah. So we'll get a lot of things coming in, say, all unrequired things and all those things, right? So there will be a lot of things which will be actually coming, and so we'll have to bypass them. So for higher taste, right? So you don't get agitated. The moment you get agitated with your thoughts, right? So then the chanting will not be peaceful. It is a gradual process, Prabhu. So it will take a lot of time. Yeah. For few, it may take. They may do it easily, yeah. And then for few, it may take time. And yeah, so but it's a gradual process, and then don't stop it. So yes, we'll slowly get the taste. Yeah. And yes, chanting is not easy. So having said that, right? So there are only 16 words which we'll have to chant. But yes, so when we do it continuously, sitting in one place, right? The mind actually drags us into different angles. But yes, we'll have to slowly fine tune that. Yeah. And the activities also, Prabhu. So the day's activities also actually reflect, and the sleep also. So the day before also, right? So we should sleep properly. We should have 6 hours good sleep. Yeah. Else you can't chant, right? So that's there. So to eat, to sleep 6 hours, and then to sleep early, right? You'll have to eat our food also early. So all these things are nothing but everything will get fine tuned, and then yeah, that mode of goodness has to be cultivated. Yes, because the day and age, right? So which we are living is in mode of passion. Yeah. So most of the time, our chanting also goes into the mode of passion only. Yeah. Okay. So we'll end today's session. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.